The first night after the collapse, you'll realize something terrible. The roof over your head isn't yours anymore. When the power grid dies, when supply chains shatter, when society fractures into desperate fragments, your apartment becomes a trap. Your suburban home a beacon for violence, and your sense of security evaporates like water on hot asphalt. You have maybe 72 hours before exposure, exhaustion, or opportunistic predators make shelter your single most critical survival factor. Not food, not water, shelter. Because hypothermia kills in hours, not days. And a visible structure in the wrong location turns you into a target before sunrise. This isn't about comfort anymore. This is about creating an invisible fortress using nothing but salvaged materials and the physics of concealment. Here's what the YouTube preppers won't tell you. Most survival shelter advice is catastrophically wrong for urban collapse scenarios. Those bushcraft lean visible from hundreds of yards away. Those tarp setups in the woods, completely impractical when you're trapped in a city with millions of panicking humans and zero wilderness skills. The reality is that post-collapse shelter construction requires 7 specific tools that bridge the gap between desperate improvisation and engineered protection. These aren't the tools you want. These are the tools that physics, materials, science, and urban warfare have proven you actually need when everything burns down. Start with the pry bar, but not the one you're imagining. Forget the small household crowbar gathering dust in your garage. You need a 36-inch Halligan-style forcible entry tool, the same equipment firefighters use to breach commercial doors. Why? Because in a collapsed urban environment, your best shelters already exist. They're just locked. Abandoned buildings, subway maintenance rooms, underground parking structures. These spaces offer insulation, concealment, and structural integrity that you cannot replicate with tarps and duct tape. The Halligan bar operates on the principle of mechanical advantage, using leveraged physics to multiply your force by factors of 10 or more. The forked end creates a fulcrum point while the adze end bites into door frames, and the pike end penetrates locks and hasps. You're not breaking in to steal, you're accessing forgotten infrastructure that becomes survival real estate when social order collapses. One tool opens reinforced doors, pries open grates covering storm drains, and even functions as a defensive weapon if necessary. The weight is brutal, yes, but the physics are undeniable. The second tool redefines what shelter means in contaminated environments, a proper respirator, specifically a full-face P100 or better. When buildings burn, when chemicals leak from abandoned factories, when bodies decompose in the streets, the air itself becomes lethal. Your lungs are wet tissue encountering particulate matter, smoke toxins, biological aerosols, and industrial chemicals. A bandana does nothing. Those paper masks, people hoarded, worthless. You need mechanical filtration down to 0.3 microns, which is where the P100 standard operates. This isn't just about breathing during the initial collapse. It's about shelter construction in hostile environments where you're breaking into basements filled with mold spores, accessing sewer systems for concealed movement, or scavenging materials from structures compromised by fire. The full-face design protects your eyes from chemical splashes and your mucous membranes from airborne pathogens. It transforms uninhabitable spaces into viable shelter locations because it controls your body's most vulnerable entry point. Without respiratory protection, entire categories of shelter become death traps. Tool 3 is where most people's understanding completely breaks down. A quality entrenching tool, military grade, with a pick attachment, not a shovel, not a garden spade. A trifold entrenching tool that locks into multiple positions and features a serrated edge on one side. The science here is about thermal mass and earth-sheltered construction. When you dig, you're accessing the planet's natural insulation properties. Soil maintains a relatively constant temperature below frost line depth, typically around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, regardless of surface conditions. That means in winter, below ground is warmer than above ground, and in summer, it's cooler. An entrenching tool lets you create spider holes for concealment, dig drainage channels to prevent flooding, excavate foundation trenches for semi-permanent structures, and most critically, create cache points for supplies. The pick attachment breaks through root systems and rocky soil that would stop a standard shovel. The folding design means portability, which matters when you're moving between locations. Underground construction isn't romantic, but thermodynamics doesn't care about your feelings. Heat rises, cold sinks, earth buffers both. The fourth tool sounds mundane until you understand the engineering. 50 feet of paracord, military specification, 550 cord, and not the cheap knockoff garbage sold at camping stores. Real 550 cord has 7 internal strands, each composed of 3 twisted yarns. This gives you a working strength of 550 pounds, but more importantly, it's modular. You can disassemble the cord into individual strands for fishing line, sutures, lashing small components, or tripwire alarms. The outer sheath can be used as tinder when frayed. But the primary application is structural engineering for improvised shelters. Paracord allows you to create tension-based frameworks that don't require nails, screws, or permanent fasteners. You can lash together found materials, salvaged lumber, shopping carts, repurposed as framework. Anything that needs to be secured quickly and modified easily. The physics of tension distribution means proper cordage can support significant weight when arranged in geometric patterns like triangulation or diagonal bracing. A debris hut, a tarp shelter, a concealed sniper hide, they all rely on cord that won't snap under load or deteriorate in wet conditions. 50 feet gives you approximately 6 to 8 different lashing points with redundancy. Tool 5 is the one that separates and forms survivors from corpses. A quality tarp, but specifically a reinforced polyethylene tarp with grommets every 18 inches, minimum 12 by 12 feet, preferably in earth tone colors. This isn't about keeping rain off. This is about creating a vapor barrier, which is the critical concept most people miss entirely. Your body generates moisture through respiration and perspiration, roughly a liter per day. In cold environments, that moisture condenses on surfaces and turns your shelter into a soaking nightmare that accelerates hypothermia. A properly deployed tarp creates a barrier between you and precipitation while allowing moisture management through strategic ventilation. The size matters because physics demands you can configure it multiple ways: as an overhead roof, as a ground barrier preventing moisture wicking from soil, as a windbreak, as a solar still for water collection, or as a visual concealment layer when covered with debris. The grommets allow you to create attachment points that distribute load stress across the material rather than concentrating it, which prevents tearing. Every configuration is temporary and adaptable because post-collapse survival is about mobility and adjustment, not permanent installation. The sixth tool addresses the problem nobody wants to discuss: violence. You need a quality fixed blade knife with a minimum 6-inch blade, full tank construction, and a blade thickness of at least 3/16 of an inch. Not for fighting, though it can, for processing materials. A knife is a force multiplier for every other tool on this list. It cuts cordage, processes within 2 usable lengths, strips bark for waterproofing material, digs when your entrenching tool isn't accessible, pries when needed, and most importantly, allows you to create precise cuts in salvaged materials for shelter construction. The physics of edge geometry means a properly sharpened blade requires minimal force to separate materials, conserving your energy in a scenario where calories are precious. Full tank construction means the blade extends through the handle, preventing breakage under stress. This tool processes reality into manageable components. It turns a pallet into wall sections, a tire into strapping material, fabric into weatherproofing. Every shelter you build will require hundreds of small cuts and modifications. Your knife makes that possible. The seventh tool is light, and specifically, a headlamp with red light capability and rechargeable batteries paired with a small solar panel. Shelter construction in collapsed environments happens at night because daylight makes you visible to threats. You need hands-free illumination to work, but white light destroys your night vision and broadcasts your location for miles. Red light preserves scotopic vision while providing enough illumination for close work. The solar recharge capability means energy independence, critical when batteries become unavailable. This isn't luxury. This is operational capacity. You cannot secure fasteners, arrange materials, or identify structural weaknesses in complete darkness, but you also cannot survive with a beacon announcing your position. Here's the psychological component everyone ignores. The moment you commit to building shelter, you're accepting that rescue isn't coming, that the government isn't going to restore order, that your previous life is over. This acceptance is paralyzing for most people, which is why they freeze, why they wait, why they die in their homes hoping for normalcy to return. Your mental preparation must happen before the collapse, because once it starts, cognitive load under stress prevents rational decision. You must pre-decide that when indicators reach critical mass, you move immediately to secure shelter. Not tomorrow, not after you check on relatives. Immediately, the survivors will be the ones who acted while others debated. The final warning is this: every single one of these tools is available right now, legally, cheaply, and without any specialized knowledge. But you don't have them. Your garage contains lawn equipment and holiday decorations, not survival infrastructure. When the collapse comes, and it will come because every complex system eventually fails, you'll have exactly what you've prepared. The difference between the victim and the survivor isn't luck, intelligence, or strength. It's the boring, unglamorous work of preparation that you either do now or regret forever in the 48 hours before exposure kills you. Your choice, your consequence. Prepare accordingly. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.